Thanks for tuning in to Thoughts for Tuesday, hosted by Bates Communications, a podcast series about business trends and leadership insights from the experts.
Welcome to Thoughts for Tuesday, a podcast where we interview CEOs about their journey to the C-suite and talk about trending business topics. I'm Suzanne Bates, CEO of Bates, and my guest today is Antonio Pietri, CEO of Aspen Technology. Welcome, Antonio.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Aspen's mission is to accelerate digital transformation in manufacturing, and I know you tackle the most complex processes and challenges, and you really help your client organizations run faster and greener and longer and safer. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what's on the cutting edge of manufacturing today. But before we get into that, I always like to start at the beginning with you.
Okay.
So, where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
Okay, great. Well, I mean, look, I was born in Venezuela a long time ago, and certainly Venezuela is a country, like a lot of countries, is gone through a lot of change over the last 20 years. But growing up in Venezuela, a great country, a great opportunity, up and coming, developing, and I had a lot of freedoms when I was growing up, especially in the city where I grew up in Valencia, Venezuela. Look, my parents, my mother, a homemaker, she was raising three boys. I'm the oldest of the three, and that kept her quite busy. My dad worked in the oil industry in Venezuela. Certainly at that point, he was moving up the ranks in refining, became a refinery manager, and eventually an executive at the highest levels of PDVSA in Venezuela until he retired in 1996. But it was a great time up until I came to the United States to get my university degree. When I was 17 years old, I graduated a little early from high school.
Wow, that's impressive. So what were you good at as a child, and what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, I mean, look, I was certainly into sports. I played a lot of sports. I played soccer, I played tennis. I like to run, and really the outdoors were my thing. I certainly started to be more focused on my studies in high school towards the end of my high school years. But I just love sports. Look, my dad in a way became my role model, in that he was being very successful in what he did, and as a result of that, in the culture of Venezuela, you never think of really trying to be a professional athlete, although there's a lot of Venezuelan baseball players in the major leagues and some very successful ones at that. But I knew I was going to go and get a university degree and go into a company and try to have a successful career. And that's what I really thought I would do. And well, it seems like that's what I did.
So you came to the U.S. at age 17 and you went to, as you say, University of Tulsa for your BS in chemical engineering. And then I know you went right on to University of Houston to get your MBA. So you clearly had in mind both technical expertise and business. Did you, but at that point, did you have a career plan forming?
Yeah, no, good question and insight. You're exactly right. I love chemical engineering. I think if I were to advise any student coming out of high school, any kid coming out of high school that is interested in engineering, I would tell that person, he or she, to go into chemical engineering. I think it's a great degree that allows for a lot of opportunities. But because of perhaps that role model that I had in my dad, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer my entire career. I wanted to go into management, and I thought that an MBA would prepare me would be that first step in preparation for a career into management. And eventually it did demonstrate to me that it was the right thing to do. The only advice I would have for people that finish an engineering degree and are considering an MBA is to perhaps go into the real world, work for 2, 3, 4 years, and then go get the MBA. It was a long stretch of studies, and I think you can get more out of an MBA if you've had some work experience. But at the time, it felt like the right thing to do, and I did benefit from it. When I went into my first job and really those first 5, 7 years of my career, I felt I had a better sense for business and understanding of business than my peers, other engineers and colleagues. And I think that gave me a little bit of an advantage on how I thought about developing my career, but how I thought about the opportunities that were coming to me.
What was that first job after you got your MBA?
Well, look, actually, out of my MBA, I took a job with an oil trading company in Houston, and I got a job as a scheduler. I was in their logistics department, scheduling actual trucks carrying fuel from refineries to storage areas. And I did that for 6 months. I very quickly realized that after having spent 4 years getting a chemical engineering degree and 2 an MBA, I wasn't using any of that in this job. And after 6 months, I actually left and got a job in a company, ABB Simcon, which was one of the companies in this industry that I am today, doing advanced process control and other type of technologies. But quickly became an engineer, an applications engineer, going into refineries, implementing advanced process control and other technologies. And I did that for 3.5 years. But also knowing that I wanted to go and find that path into management, and to me that first path was sales, and the first opportunity that showed up to move into sales, I took it.
Yeah. So you got your credibility and business acumen in sales. You understood the commercial side of business right away. And then I know you moved on and got experience in other areas of business management, programs, manufacturing, right? You just really, it sounded like when I read your bio, you were sort of collecting all these experiences.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I always worried about in my career was to become stereotyped. My sales job, that first sales job, was in Latin America, and I did that for about 5 years. And I didn't want to be stereotyped into the Latin American sales expert, if you will. But because I wanted to go into management, I felt, well, do I want to be that sales leader ultimately, or do I want to have a broader breadth of experience? So look, in the late 90s with the IT spend and everything that was going on, I stepped out of sales when sales was a great job to have in the late 90s in software. But I went into project management and volunteered to be a program director, which had the benefit of that it was going to relocate me to England, because that was also one of my aspirations, to do an international assignment. So I went and learned, and really it was one of those sink or swim scenarios, managing a very large project, eventually having 30 people working for me, but also then benefiting from the expat assignment in England, doing this project for what was then Statoil, now Equinor. And I spent about 50% of my time between Norway and Denmark, where their 2 refineries were. So that gave me my first experience managing people, also my first experience dealing with other cultures in Europe, outside of the US and Latin America, and just started to give me a sense for what it took to lead teams, but also what it took to be successful within different cultures, and that was very important.
I believe you also worked in Asia Pac, so you're quite the citizen of the world now. How has that informed the way you lead?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, so I thought after England, I was done with my expat assignments. And the thing is that, in management, you very quickly realize who are those individuals with potential and that are willing to make a sacrifice and work hard. And I was offered the opportunity to go into Singapore and I spent 2 years there, and then into Beijing in China, I spent 3 years there. And really stepping into a region where I had no knowledge or understanding of, their cultures and language and how to do business. And what it really taught me was that I needed to sort of step back and in a way, let it come to me, understand what motivated the different individuals in the different countries, because the fact is that Asia Pacific, while it is one region, every country is its own culture. Japan, South Korea, China, even Southeast Asia, Thailand, Singapore, then India, Australia. And what that shows you is you have to be very flexible on how you lead, understand what drives individuals in the different countries. I can tell you in Latin America, if you're in sales, people put a lot of emphasis on their base salaries because their economies fluctuate so much that sometimes you hit spots where you're not selling a lot and you're not earning that commission check. So a lot more emphasis on the base salary. In the United States, as the best salespeople, they just want the highest possible commission earnouts because it's about selling. And similarly in Asia, what motivates someone in China is very different than someone in South Korea or in India. So you have to have that flexibility and understand their cultures and how you're going to lead them. But I would say that is the experience because I was also then became the managing director in Asia Pacific, and really that started to give me a sense that okay, I always wanted to get into an executive team. I felt that was my goal. But at that point, once I became a very young managing director at 36 years old, and I thought, well, after 5 years in Asia, I thought, well, maybe I do have that runway to get into the CEO position. And I made it very clear, actually, to my predecessor. The first time I met him, he came in to turn the company around, and I said, look, I like to be a CEO. And it was a risky move because he just come in to be the CEO of the company, and you never know how to take that. But he actually, after 9 years, I worked for him the whole time, and eventually he put me forward to the board as his successor. And to me, the learning from that is that you need to communicate to people your ambitions, what you want to achieve in life, and then work with them, and hopefully they will help you to get there if you have a collaborative relationship with those individuals.
Very good. It sounds like he was something of a mentor to you as well as a
I
boss.
learned a lot from him. Absolutely learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot from a lot of people. And look, sometimes it's as much about the things you learn that you don't want to repeat as the things that you learn that are positive. Because, there's also a lot of bad experiences and bad management out there. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I want to pivot to talking about Aspen Tech. You're an industrial AI company, and right now I know you're working on some very exciting projects. Many of those I'm sure you can't even talk about, but I'm curious about the concept of autonomous manufacturing, because we've all heard about autonomous vehicles and we kind of are accustomed to applying it to that. But what is autonomous manufacturing, and what will it mean ultimately, not just to your customers who are the manufacturers, but to their customers? Yeah, no, great.
Look, I'm very excited. I've been in Aspen Technology now for almost 28, 29 years. And I'm as excited about our future as I've always been, as I've ever been. Maybe a little bit of a history. We were a spin-off from MIT. All of our products are grounded on the first principles of engineering, the math, the chemistry, the physics. That's how we've been successful. That's how we create a lot of value for our customers. Now, since the announcement of Industry 4.0 in 2015, a new generation of technologies and capabilities have come into the market. Of course, the cloud, high-performance computing, artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality, edge connectivity, and all of that. And we quickly realized that there was an opportunity to leverage these technologies to really transform our products. So today, we are going to start releasing with our next software release a new generation of software that will blend those first principles of engineering in our products and the domain expertise with artificial intelligence to create a new generation of hybrid products that will blend engineering principles with artificial intelligence capabilities to create as a foundation for what we call the self-optimizing plant or an autonomous plant. And really that would be a plant that it is self-learning, self-adapting and self-sustaining. It's constantly monitoring the plant, just like an autonomous vehicle would do when driving, constantly monitoring its surroundings to see what's happening. Similarly, we believe that over the next 10 years, we'll be able to deliver the capabilities to monitor these assets that are highly complex and dangerous to operate 24/7, monitor every possible variable, and then integrate that data and that information to then automate decision making. Now, this will not be truly 100% autonomous because you will always need to have the engineers and the operators involved in some of the decision making. But the goal here is to create plants that are safer to operate, that are more sustainable, they emit less emissions, they produce less waste, are more reliable, meaning less accidents that certainly can lead to injuries or loss of life. And in that context, make them more profitable. And the reason for that is certainly because our core industries in oil and gas and chemicals are going through their own transformations. Their licenses to operate are being challenged by society, climate change, plastic waste, the circular economy. And these companies in these industries are looking to transform their business models towards more sustainable business models. And we believe that the autonomous plant or the self-optimizing plant will help bridge that transition into those new business models of the future to help them remain relevant, profitable, and competitive, because they're an important part of the global economy. They're just looking for ways to operate in a more sustainable manner.
Yes. Well, the sustainability movement has been around for a while, and I know you've always been committed to the environment. It seems in the last year or two, there's been much more interest in it from the general public as well as from manufacturers. Could you give me maybe a story or an example of how your technology helps your clients, your customers who are the manufacturers, reduce their environmental impact or footprint?
Yeah. So no, and that's a great point. And the fact is that the company has always been about value creation, but a lot of that value creation for our customers is through helping them address environmental factors, emissions, or reduce energy consumption. So look, one of the large global chemical companies, even back in the mid 2000s, listed in their 10K, their annual financial report, the fact that over the previous 10 years, through the use of our multivariable control and optimization technologies, they had generated $1 billion of cumulative value in their chemical plants. But at the same time, while doing that, they had avoided emitting 500,000 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere because of running their processes much more efficiently through our technologies. And like that example, we have thousands of examples where customers rely on our capabilities to be much more environmentally friendly and sustainable. This new generation of capabilities is about improving the reliability of these assets in a way. In capital intensive industries, reliability is about safety and sustainability. In a way, the two are linked together, because an accident can cause injuries or loss of life, but also lead to an environmental disaster like we've seen in the past. So improving reliability is now an area of a lot of focus in these companies, and this new generation of capabilities that we're working on are about that. Also, how do we keep equipment from failing? How do we keep having unplanned downtime, which is what eventually will also support sustainability.
Yeah. Well, all that you're doing, I think, will enable your customers, companies in general, to make more solid, firm commitments on the environment, on safety. And it certainly could have an impact on expectations of policymakers, lawmakers, as they push hard for those kinds of regulations. So it's kind of this ecosystem that's all interconnected, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, certainly the U.S. government is involved in funding research in a lot of universities to come up with chemical plants. They call it process intensification, meaning reducing the footprint of this plant and making the processes much more energy efficient and less wasteful. So it's certainly a push that has been happening over the last 10 years. Our technologies, our modeling and simulation technologies, are being used in researching these type of processes, but ultimately it's going to be all about sustainability. The last 7 months with the pandemic, if anything, have accelerated the push into sustainability. And our customers are also going now, the transition that they knew they were going to go through is being accelerated also by the pandemic as the demand patterns have changed. So this is all now front and center in the agenda of these companies.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about the pandemic a little bit. I'm sure it's had an impact on your customers. Not all negative, because some of them are probably pivoting to new technology and improvements they might not have invested in as quickly. So I think, that's what I'm hearing from the CEOs that I'm talking with. There's a blessing in all of this, if you look at it that way, especially if they've got the capital, to invest. But I'm also interested in not only how your customers are pivoting, but how you are pivoting in the myriad of ways I'm sure you're having to do that right now in a nearly post-pandemic world where we know there's going to be a new normal. How's your company changed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think there's been a lot of also discussion throughout all of this in the last 7 months about resiliency in this type of environment. What I would say about that is that you have to build resiliency before you hit the crisis, because when you're in the middle of the crisis, it's hard to build resiliency. You're just reacting. So we were lucky because we had invested over the previous 5 years a lot in IT systems. And when we decided to close our offices and decamp all of our employees to their homes, our systems were in place to do video, to do communication, and everything. The only thing we didn't have in place was electronic signatures for documents, which we quickly put in place. But that sort of allowed us to focus on the business as opposed to what's going on internally. How do we stand up 1,800 employees around the world to work remotely? Now, in all of this, during my tenure, I've been in a process of certainly rebuilding the culture of the company. We have a name for our culture: disciplined agility. Disciplined is really around how we manage the business, how we think about cost and the profitability that we deliver. Agility is about growth. What are the things that we do to grow the company? And the two create a very nice tension in managing cost and driving growth. But it's a transformation of the culture that I started 7 years ago when I became CEO. And what the pandemic did, it showed me that you can change culture, and actually that culture of disciplined agility that we wanted to build surfaced to the top, because very quickly different organizations in the company functions got organized and put in place actions vis-a-vis our customers. For example, our customer support organization did a great job in that, knowing that everyone was going to be working from home, maybe they won't have more time, they made all of our e-learning free. So all of a sudden, we had 10,000 customers taking e-learning courses, just sharpening their skills while they were working from home, as opposed to buried in the day-to-day of their jobs in the plants. We also had introduced a certification process around some of our products about a year earlier, and there was a fee that had to be paid. Well, we also eliminated the fee, and basically in the first 4 months of the pandemic, we had 1,000 users of our products get certified in our products as well, and we've had tremendous feedback from our customers about those actions. But more importantly, I think the pandemic forced everyone to rethink what was possible. And, you know, implementing operating technologies into very complex assets would have never happened remotely. You had to go on site and do it on site. But with the pandemic, everyone working from home, customers started to allow us to do implementations remotely of our technologies, and we've done it now very successfully. We've changed the way we sell. Our field sales organization became an inside sales organization, so we had to quickly train them on inside selling skills. Our inside sales organization was training our field organization, sales organization, how to be an inside sales organization. And 7 months on, we haven't met customers for 7 months, and we're still selling to them and being very successful. So look, that's how we've reacted, and many more things. But the important thing to me, and what I've told my organization, is how do we reimagine Aspen Tech now going forward? Now that we've learned all these things, let's make sure we take them forward and reimagine our processes and how we engage with our customers. And to me, that'll be the more important thing, is not to leave behind these things that have been so beneficial and useful, and take them forward for us, and even add more to them.
That's such a great reframe, because I think many organizations, many leaders are certainly now thinking about what they've already learned and implemented to be more agile. Disciplined agility is a wonderful term. I'm not sure everybody's gotten as far ahead as you have in thinking about how you bring that thinking, that kind of thinking, into 2021 and beyond. And that's really going to be the challenge for so many CEOs and senior executives and their leadership teams.
Yeah. You know, change was already happening very fast and accelerated. I think the pandemic is just created exponential change and acceleration of that change. To me, you know, my concern, the thing that I do worry about is the speed of change, and how do we stay ahead? What are the organizational capabilities that one has to build in the organization to be able to cope with the speed of change? I have something that about a year before the pandemic, because we were moving into new markets, we were coming into new competitors that we didn't understand because it was new industries and new markets. I'd introduced something that I call the 5 A's: awareness, action orientation, agility, ambition, and accountability, because it was my way of telling the organization, we have to be a learning organization, and when we're learning, we then have to define actions, execute them with agility, be ambitious about it, and accountable. And the pandemic, if anything, is just made that even more important, because it, in my opinion, will be the way to really cope with the speed of change, having organizations that are learning organizations, where everyone is intellectually curious and then is action oriented.
Yeah. Well, I've so enjoyed our conversation. I just have a couple more questions, Antonio. The first is, I've heard a lot today that I think would inform managers and leaders who would like to become the CEO someday. You've already provided so much guidance on that. Is there anything else that you would tell an aspiring CEO about the path to get to the chief executive office?
Yeah. Well, look, at the end of the day, it's about outcomes. I think if you're going to aspire to be CEO, you have to demonstrate that people can count with you to deliver the results. But I also believe that there's a incredibly undervalued trait in individuals that that I think it's important to in the path to be a CEO, and when you're a CEO especially, which is intellectual curiosity. I think you have to be intellectually curious about your organization, the people that work for you, your function, your environment, your competitors, your technologies. And that's something that I've espoused tremendously with my teams and the company now. It is actually one of our leadership principles to be intellectually curious, because it is through learning and that gives you awareness that then you can formulate strategies or develop a point of view. So I think that's important. Look, I spent 25, 28 years in the same industry, in the same company, but that has given me an incredible insight and knowledge, institutional knowledge about what's required to be successful in this company and in this industry. So I know we live in a culture where changing jobs very often it's a thing, but I would also argue that mastering something is very important. You know, you see it in sports, you talk about the 10,000 hours of training, but the best athletes will tell you they've practiced their entire lives to become what they've become. And similarly, I think in professional life, if you master something, then you'll have the chance to get to the top of that mountain.
Wonderful advice. How about you? What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Yeah, I mean, look, of course, a career is full of question marks and anxiety and celebrations, and I've thought about it, and you know, I'd say, look, keep doing what you're doing, and that. Because I think that would be a very reassuring message to someone. Look, you're on the right path. Just trust yourself. I certainly, having migrated to this country and not having my family here, I also had to rely on my own instincts, and I thought that was important. But look, trust the process, and certainly treat others like you would like to be treated. I think that's very important. One of the things that I've also felt is eliminate politics in your organization, because that's a very negative and wasteful exercise. And I like to think that we built an organization in Aspen Tech where politics are not accepted. Is about outcomes. Is about rewarding those that perform, and regardless, by the way, of race or beliefs, and that's worked for me.
Antonio Pietri, CEO of Aspen Tech, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your insights and for sharing so much about yourself. Really appreciate the time and enjoyed the interview. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Suzanne, and very glad to have done this.